The wind howled through the jagged peaks of Montana's Bitterroot Mountains, carrying whispers of a world that judged what it could not understand. In the shadow of those peaks, Elias Kane, a 22-year-old Omega, stood frozen, his heart pounding as he faced the man who could destroy him with a single word. That man, Cashin Holt, the 25-year-old alpha heir to the Holt dynasty, stared back, his blue eyes cold as the steel of the empire he was destined to rule. Elias had always been invisible. Born into the lowest caste of Haven Ridge, a sprawling, modern city-state in Montana's wilderness, he was an Omega, meek, silent, and expected to serve. His hazel eyes, soft as autumn leaves, hid a fire no one had ever cared to notice. He worked in the Holt Estate's archives, a dusty labyrinth of records where the elite buried their secrets. It was there, amid yellowed pages and flickering lights, that he first saw Cashin. Cashin was everything Elias was not: commanding, untouchable, the embodiment of alpha strength. His family's corporation, Holt Enterprises, controlled Haven Ridge's economy, its laws, and its rigid caste system. Alphas ruled, betas served, and omegas obeyed. Cashin's life was a performance of power, his every move watched by a society that worshipped him and feared his temper. But Elias saw something else in those rare moments when Cashin lingered in the archives, a flicker of loneliness in his icy gaze. Their first true encounter came late one evening, when Elias, lost in a stack of old contracts, heard the heavy oak door creak open. Cashin stood there, his tailored suit pristine but his expression raw, as if he'd just fought a war no one could see. "You," he said, voice low and sharp. "Why are you still here?" Elias stammered, his hands trembling as he clutched a ledger. I'm cataloging, sir. It's my job." Cashin's eyes narrowed, studying him like a predator sizing up prey. "You're not like the others. You don't cower." It wasn't a compliment, but a challenge. Elias didn't know why he answered the way he did. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the spark of defiance he'd buried for years. "Maybe I'm just tired of cowering," he said softly. That moment changed everything. Cashin began returning to the archives, at first with excuses, documents he needed, records to verify. But soon, their conversations stretched into the night, filled with quiet confessions. Cashin spoke of the pressure to be perfect, the weight of a legacy he didn't choose. Elias shared fragments of his own life. A childhood of being overlooked, a mother who taught him to hide his Omega traits to survive. They were opposites, yet their wounds mirrored each other. One night, under the dim glow of a desk lamp, Cashin reached for Elias's hand. The touch was electric, forbidden. Alphas and Omegas could not bond, not in Haven Ridge, where such a union threatened the caste system's foundation. But as their fingers intertwined, Elias felt a pull stronger than fear. Cashin's voice was a whisper. "This could ruin us both." "Then why does it feel so right?" Elias replied, his voice steady for the first time. Their secret meetings grew bolder. Stolen moments in the archives became clandestine walks through the city's outskirts, where no one would recognize the alpha heir and the silent Omega. They laughed under starlit skies, shared dreams in abandoned barns, and carved their initials into a fence post during a reckless, moonlit night. But the world was watching. Haven Ridge was a city of eyes, and the Holt family had enemies who thrived on scandal. Rumors began to spread, whispers of Cashin's late-night absences, of an Omega scene too close to the estate. Elias noticed the stares in the streets, the way conversations hushed when he passed. Cashin grew tense, his cold exterior returning as he tried to shield Elias from scrutiny. "They can't know," he warned one night, his voice tight. "My family will crush you to protect their name." Elias wanted to believe they could outrun the truth, but Haven Ridge was relentless. One evening, as they met in a secluded meadow, a figure emerged from the shadows. A beta enforcer loyal to Cashin's father. "You're a fool, Cashin," the man spat. "This ends now, or the Omega dies." Elias's heart stopped as Cashin stepped in front of him, his body a shield. "Touch him, and you'll regret it," Cashin growled, his alpha instincts flaring. The enforcer backed off, but the threat lingered like smoke. They were no longer safe. As they stood in the meadow, the weight of their secret pressed down. Elias looked into Cashin's eyes, searching for the man who'd held his hand under the stars. "What do we do now?" he asked, voice breaking. Cashin's jaw tightened, but his hand found Elias's. "We fight," he said. "For us." The meadow became their sanctuary, a fragile bubble where Elias and Cashin could pretend the world wasn't closing in. But Haven Ridge was a machine, its gears grinding toward control, and their love was a wrench in its workings. Elias, once invisible, now felt like a target. Every glance from a stranger, every whisper in the market, carried the threat of exposure. Cashin's life grew more complicated. His father, Marcus Holt, was a titan of industry, a man whose word was law in Haven Ridge. Marcus had plans for Cashin, a strategic marriage to a beta heiress from a rival corporation, a union to solidify the Holt dynasty. Cashin's defiance, his refusal to court the heiress, his late-night disappearances, drew Marcus's suspicion. "You're slipping, boy," Marcus said one evening, his voice like gravel. "Don't make me clean up your mess." Elias, meanwhile, faced his own battles. His mother, Lila, a weary Omega who'd spent her life bowing to alphas, sensed something was wrong. "You're different," she said one night in their cramped apartment, her eyes sharp with worry. "You're hiding something, Elias. Don't think I can't see it." "I'm fine," Elias lied, his heart aching. He wanted to tell her about Cashin, about the man who made him feel seen for the first time. But Lila had survived by staying small, by teaching Elias to do the same. She wouldn't understand. The tension broke one rainy afternoon when Elias found a note slipped under his door. Scrawled in sharp, urgent handwriting, it read, "Meet me at the old mill. Midnight." See, the abandoned mill on Haven Ridge's edge was a relic of the city's industrial past, its rusted beams and broken windows a perfect hiding place. Elias went, driven by a mix of fear and longing. Cashin was waiting, his face pale under the moonlight. "They know," he said without preamble. "My father's spies saw us in the meadow. He thinks you're a distraction, Elias. He wants you gone." Elias's stomach dropped. "Gone how?" Cashin's silence was answer enough. In Haven Ridge, Omegas who stepped out of line didn't just disappear. They were erased, their existence scrubbed from records. Elias had seen it happen, a neighbor, a friend, all gone after defying the system. "We could run," Elias said, the words tumbling out. "Leave Haven Ridge. Start over somewhere else." Cashin's laugh was bitter. "Run where? My family's reach is everywhere, and I can't abandon my sister." His voice softened at the mention of Nora, his 12-year-old sister, the only person in the Holt family who looked at Cashin like he was human. Nora was frail, born with a rare condition that kept her confined to the estate, and Cashin was her protector. "Then what?" Elias asked, his voice cracking. "We just give up?" Cashin stepped closer, his hand cupping Elias's face. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, his voice raw. "But I know I can't lose you." Their kiss was desperate, a collision of fear and need. The mill's walls groaned around them, as if echoing the weight of their choice. But as they pulled apart, headlights pierced the darkness. A black SUV screeched to a stop outside, and 3 enforcers spilled out, their faces hard with purpose. "Run!" Cashin shouted, shoving Elias toward a side exit. They sprinted through the mill, dodging rusted machinery, their footsteps echoing like gunfire. The enforcers were fast, their shouts closing in. Elias's lungs burned, but Cashin's grip on his hand kept him moving. They burst into the forest, branches tearing at their clothes. The enforcers' flashlights swept the trees, but the darkness was their ally. They collapsed behind a fallen log, panting, their bodies pressed close. "We can't keep doing this," Elias whispered, his voice trembling. "They'll find us." Cashin's eyes burned with defiance. "Then we make them regret it." The forest became their temporary refuge, but safety was an illusion. Elias and Cashin knew they couldn't hide forever, not from Marcus Holt, not from Haven Ridge's unrelenting gaze. They needed a plan, but plans required trust, and trust was a luxury neither could afford. Cashin took Elias to his safe house, a dilapidated cabin hidden deep in the Bitterroot wilderness. It belonged to an old friend of Cashin's mother, a beta woman named Mara who'd left Haven Ridge years ago after defying the system. Mara was wiry, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes sharp with the kind of wisdom born from survival. "You're in deep, Cashin," she said, glancing at Elias. "This Omega's got you risking everything." "He's worth it," Cashin said, his voice steady. Mara raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She gave them shelter, food, and a warning. "Marcus won't stop. He'll burn this city to the ground before he lets you shame his name." Elias felt the weight of her words. He wasn't just risking his own life. He was dragging Cashin, Nora, and even Mara into danger. That night, as Cashin slept fitfully on a cot, Elias sat by the window, staring at the stars. He wondered if love was worth this chaos, if his heart was worth a kingdom's wrath. The answer came the next morning when Cashin woke him with a soft kiss. "We're in this together," he said, his voice a vow. "No matter what." Their fragile peace shattered when Mara intercepted a message from one of her contacts in Haven Ridge. Marcus had issued an ultimatum. Cashin was to return to the estate and renounce Elias, or Nora would suffer. The message was clear. Marcus knew Cashin's weakness, and he'd use it. "We have to go back," Cashin said, his face pale but resolute. "I can't let him hurt her." Elias nodded, though fear clawed at him. "I'm coming with you." The journey back to Haven Ridge was tense, the city's lights looming like a predator's eyes. They slipped into the Holt estate through a service entrance, guided by Cashin's knowledge of its labyrinthine halls. They found Nora in her room, her frail frame curled under a blanket, her eyes bright with relief when she saw Cashin. "You came," she whispered, hugging him tightly. But their reunion was cut short. Marcus was waiting, his presence filling the room like a storm. "You disappoint me, Cashin," he said, his voice cold. "And you," he turned to Elias. "You're nothing but a stain on this family." Elias stood tall, his voice steady despite his fear. "I'm not nothing. Not to him." Marcus's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Nora stepped forward, her small voice fierce. "Leave them alone, father. Cashin's happy. Isn't that enough?" For a moment, Marcus faltered, his gaze softening at his daughter's plea. But his pride was stronger. He signaled to the enforcers waiting in the shadows. "Take the Omega." Cashin roared, shoving Elias behind him. The room erupted into chaos, fists flying, furniture overturning. Elias fought too, his Omega strength surprising even himself. They managed to escape, dragging Nora with them. But the cost was clear. They were fugitives now, hunted by the most powerful man in Haven Ridge. Haven Ridge's streets were a maze of danger, but Elias, Cashin, and Nora moved like ghosts, guided by Mara's network of rebels. These were people like Elias, Omegas, Betas, even a few rogue Alphas, who'd grown tired of the caste system's chains. They offered shelter, food, and whispers of a growing resistance. Cashin was torn. His love for Elias and his duty to Nora pulled him in opposite directions. I can't keep running, he confessed one night, as they hid in a basement safe house. Nora needs stability. She's not strong enough for this. Elias took his hand, his voice soft but firm. We'll find a way. For her. For us. Their chance came unexpectedly. Mara's contacts uncovered a secret. Marcus's empire was crumbling. His ruthless control had bred enemies, and the rival corporation was gaining ground. If they could expose Marcus's corruption, his illegal deals, his erasure of Omegas, they could topple him. The plan was reckless. Elias and Cashin would infiltrate the Holt Estate's main server, hidden in a fortified wing, and leak the evidence to the public. Nora, too weak to join them, stayed with Mara, her eyes filled with hope. Come back, she whispered to Cashin. The estate was a fortress, but Cashin knew its weaknesses. They slipped inside under cover of night, moving through shadows to avoid patrols. The server room was a sterile, humming chamber, its walls lined with blinking lights. Elias, with his archivist's knowledge, navigated the system, his fingers flying over the keyboard as he unearthed files. Contracts, bribes, records of Omegas relocated to silence dissent. But time ran out. Alarms blared, and enforcers stormed the room. Cashin fought fiercely, giving Elias time to upload the files to Mara's network. As the data spread across Haven Ridge, screens in the city square lit up with the truth. Citizens stopped, stunned, as Marcus's crimes were laid bare. The enforcers overpowered Cashin, pinning him to the ground. Elias, cornered, made a choice. He dropped the drive and raised his hands, his eyes locked on Cashin's. I love you, he said, the words a lifeline. Marcus arrived, his face a mask of fury. But the tide was turning. Outside, protests erupted as the city learned the truth. The rival corporations seized the moment, and Marcus's allies began to abandon him. In the chaos, Mara's rebels stormed the estate, freeing Elias and Cashin. The aftermath was messy but hopeful. Marcus was arrested, his empire dismantled. Haven Ridge began to change, its caste system questioned for the first time. Elias and Cashin, battered but unbroken, stood together in the meadow where it all began. Nora, healthier now, ran to them, her laughter a promise of better days. Their love had been a spark, igniting a revolution. It wasn't perfect, and the scars remained, but as Elias leaned into Cashin's embrace, he knew they'd built something stronger than fear, a future where they could be free. This is the complete story, divided into 4 parts as requested, each approximately 1,000 words, written in emotive, dramatic American English. The narrative centers on Elias and Cashin's forbidden love, set against the backdrop of a rigid, futuristic city-state in Montana, USA. The story builds tension through their secret romance, societal oppression, and a climactic rebellion, culminating in a meaningful resolution that emphasizes love, sacrifice, and societal change. The image prompt sets the tone with a romantic, emotionally charged scene that introduces the story's core themes.